In Denmark, there are kind of several conversations going. One is very much about the need of employees from outside Denmark. We have basically we have an employment deficit. We need more people. We have a functional unemployment situation. But people in unemployment are still there, but they are less than 2%. So there is an increase of European workers, especially European workers from the European Union, coming to Denmark. And that is reflected in the cities with large production companies, and of course in Copenhagen. And in Copenhagen, it's 20% of the workforce that is a foreigner, which contributes with taxes, which contributes with a lot of things, but are still, for instance, deprived of the social infrastructure that we call culture, because they don't speak Danish, or many of the institutions don't have programs in English or in other European languages. Then, of course, there is the geopolitical narrative that Denmark has been a very strong supporter of Ukraine, with per capita more money than any other country. With lots of F-16 planes and money and armament, and we are building weapon factories in Denmark for Ukraine, by Ukrainian money, to produce weapons to the Ukraine. We have created a social help fund for Ukraine that is helping people who are left in the eastern parts of Ukraine. And that has kind of created two narratives. One that is about our role in Europe, defending European values, not still knowing what is that then. And then on the other side, defending Denmark. So this notion that Russia is a potential aggressor. So suddenly we are really seeing heavy investments in our army, our navy, our air force, and it's being accepted, which is super interesting. There's nobody questioning it. It's just being accepted that we are more than tripling the amount of money invested into the defense structure. And of course that is there. Those are the three main political kind of focuses, I would say. 8 out of 10 Danes visit a cultural institutions every month. So 80% of the population visits cultural institutions 12 times a year. Those are, in a European context, quite good numbers. So the cultural institutions are having higher visitor numbers than they have ever had before. The museums are all-time high, the theaters are all-time high. So in one way you could say, yes, they actually are part of this, because why do they benefit so much? Why do we have so many visitors? Is that because in times of crisis, people gather around narratives and places where they can meet each other and be together? Is that the sense of community that is strengthened by the presence of cultural institutions? That could be one part of it. We don't really know why yet. There's a lot of research going on right now, but what seems to be interesting is that narratives, diversity, acceptance, that cultural spaces are very often spaces of a greater acceptance than other kind of spaces, resonates very well with the needs of the Danes right now. So the cultural sector is having the best period ever in Danish history, ever. And there's no lack of money, there's an increase of finance. There has not been any cuts yet to the cultural sector, despite all the investment in the military. The cultural sector has kind of sailed up as a place for social innovation. And I loved this comment that Europe and the decolonial perspective does not embrace all Europeans. People in other parts of Europe being part of a colonial regime was actually their reality. They were colonized. So this nuanced understanding of Europe is super needed. And I think that the polarization between the right-wing nationalist Europe and the mid kind of center-left, but center European mainstream will grow bigger and will become a political divide that will make Europe enabled to make a number of decisions in a fast way, which we have just seen for 2 years that we haven't been able to do, which is, I find, deeply problematic. I'm just looking to my kids. All of my kids have been able to work, to study, to have a life, to engage, to be European. They are young, and their perspective is already way more open, way more broad than my perspective was when I had their age. So I can see just through that generation that they have abilities that I didn't have. They have understandings that I didn't have. They have a internalized language of being young and transnational. I don't think they talk a lot about themselves as Europeans. They are more global citizens in a way, have traveled all over the world, has family all over the world. So I see them as just my small contribution to a generation of people with a much broader backdrop for future decision making. And I have a lot of faith in those generations. I think they are so much wiser than we were. They are so much more active than we were. They are activist in a way that I doesn't necessarily understand, but I think it works better than those old-fashioned political structures that we have created. So I have faith in the young.